Good afternoon. My name is Marcia Woods. I'm an adjunct English professor here at GRCC, but in my other life, I work for Kent Intermediate School District as their Year 1 teacher in their ATIP program. ATIP stands for Academically Talented Youth Program, and that is a program where middle school students, and that means specifically 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students from any school in Kent County who qualify can come together in one location and study very rapidly either math or language arts. I am the first year language arts teacher, and I have two of my students with me today. Emma is currently in my Year 1 teacher. Mike in my class. Mike was in my class last year. He is in Year 2. What that means is that when they were in 7th grade, or you are currently in 7th grade, right? They were doing 9th and 10th grade credit work, but instead of meeting in their local school, which is City Middle for Emma and Sparta Middle for Mike, they came to one location where they met with age and ability peers 2 hours a week, and that was their entire class. The rest of the time they had to do homework on their own, and they had a study hall at their local school. Believe me, it is not an easy program to get all of your English or all of your math in 2 hours a week of intense instruction and then be expected to pretty much teach yourself and keep yourself on course the other 4 hours of a week in your school and do all your homework on your own. It is not a course for laggards, slackers, or the underachieving. It is a course you can only get into by passing the SAT or the ACT with college level standards in about 5th grade. So it is an achievement and a high ability program. So I have these kids here who can talk to you directly about what it is like to have an unusual ability at an unusual age, if you want to hear about it from the kid's point of view, as opposed to the evil English teacher's point of view. But I want to start out with a reality check on characteristics of the gifted, and these are just flat out statements. They might be considered a little inflammatory, and I want you to tell me whether or not you feel they are fact or fiction. These are statements you will hear, okay? Number 1, gifted children are able to challenge themselves and learn at their own pace without outside intervention. Now, I have been told this by science teachers, social studies teachers, reading teachers. Let me ask you, is that fact or fiction? What's your opinion? Don't want to hazard a guess? Fiction. It is fiction. It is absolute fiction. And we know that from research. In a classroom situation, the gifted child gains academically by teaching those less able. Fact or fiction? Yes. Have you had experience with that?
Kind of. Sometimes in the class, teacher, like if certain people get a certain grade on a test or something, a lot of the people who got a higher grade do some teaching with the people who got a lower grade, or they'll set people up in a group with people with both higher grades and lower grades, so that the people with lower grades have a chance to get some education.
Do you know what that's called? That's called make it easy on the teacher. What is the high ability child learning? Zippo. Okay. Ability grouping is harmful and unnecessary. Fact or fiction? Now we're going by research here, not by feelings. By research, it is fiction. Early admission to school or grade skipping robs a child of a normal childhood. By research, not by feelings. Fact or fiction? It is fiction. By research. Okay. American schools have low standards. Fact or fiction? Fact. Fact, fact, fact. Okay? Low standards lead to underachievement. Fact or fiction? That is an incontrovertible fact. Often children who are expected to learn things they already know become bored, frustrated, withdrawn, and come into conflict with the teacher. Fact. And do we know this as a fact?
Yes.
Yes. Would you care to comment on this fact?
Well, it bothered me because when I was in second grade, I had a teacher who I always wanted to raise my hand because I knew what we were learning, and she would tell me to put my hand down because I already knew it and the other kids didn't, and she didn't want me to take away, I guess, their possibility of answering, but I got kind of stamped.
Yes. Put your hand down, Emma. Put your hand down, Emma. Okay. And you've had experience like that too?
I think that's one of the main reasons I got into the AJ program was because regular classes were just boring. It's like you learn the same thing over and over again because the first month of class is usually spent reviewing what everyone forgot over the summer.
But you didn't forget it?
Not really.
No.
I remembered it after the first week of the class anyways.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And this coming into conflict with the teacher, guess who the teacher is? That's you. And it becomes a very lose-lose situation. These are the very kids you want to have on your side, and they're the ones who have picked you to be at war with, and it's not your fault. Okay, gifted children are at a greater risk than other children for underachievement. True or false? Fact or fiction? Absolute fact. Absolute fact. Not only are they at a greater risk for underachievement, but studies have shown that 10% of the population of most jails and prisons are gifted. And that's a scary thing. When you have great ability at organization, at planning, at strategy, at math, and you have no outlet, where is it going to go? Okay. Gifted students often pretend they are less able in order to fit in and avoid being labeled as nerds. Do you think that's fact or fiction? Fact. And unfortunately, this is more true for girls than boys. Gifted girls go underground about middle school. Do you see that happening?
There's one girl in my class, and then there's 4 guys.
Yes. Yes. Well, you have an unusual class. In Emma's class, we have 4 boys, and the rest, and I have a class of 15, so we have 11 girls. I think the math is right there. I don't teach math. But it is difficult for a gifted girl to maintain giftedness once she hits middle school. Teachers approve of brightness in girls up to middle school when they start getting male teachers. Male teachers frequently do not approve of assertive women. Well, times may be changing, but stop and think. Gifted girls like to be right, just like gifted boys do. And when you're right, you like to raise your hand a lot, you like to prove you're right, and this does not work well in a male-dominated classroom, very frequently. How many of you young women keep quiet in your classrooms? Good for you. I'm glad to hear that. I have trouble getting girls to talk in some of my classrooms, unless the older the woman, the less likely she is to stifle. But the closer to high school age, the quieter the girl, unless she's a very unusual girl. And that's just a shame. That's high school training. But it also comes out with gifted girls. Okay. Gifted children are gifted in all school subjects. Fact or fiction? Fiction. That's why the ATIP program allows you to be gifted in one area as opposed to the other. Back in the 50s, in the 60s, school programs tracked students. I don't know about Michigan, back east where I am from. You were only allowed to be unilaterally gifted. You had to be in programs by IQ scores, not by test scores, and you had to be gifted in all areas to get into a program. And if your scores dropped one year, you were taken out of programs. It could be pretty horrendous. And you were tracked for life. And there was no give or take between programs. So this is really true. You're not necessarily gifted in all school subjects. Some people are. Gifted children are better adjusted, more popular, and happier than average children. It's fiction. They're normal children. They're just regular children with brain capabilities. They're not more or less than other children. Okay. Most 3rd and 4th grade teachers make modifications in the regular curriculum for students considered to be gifted. Fact or fiction? Oh, wildly fiction. I only wish it were true. And furthermore, why they pinpointed 3rd and 4th grade? 3rd and 4th grade, and are any of you interested in going into those middle elementary grades? They are crucial. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades are the heart of our elementary program. You're over the hump. Kids can now read. You're over the hump. They can now do basic math, and you're into the really fun stuff. Oh, let's do long division. But they're not into gender studies yet, so they're pure. You can teach them things. The world is still opening. It is ideal. But it's at the 3rd, 4th grade level that the kids who came to school verbally precocious, because their world consisted of nothing but adults, those few who did, now start underachieving. So you really are in the ideal place to start search and rescue. This is where underachievement starts, 3rd and 4th grade. The smarty pants kid whose social skills have never caught up to their brain, or whose hand and eye coordination have never caught up to their brain, start to fall back when it starts to get hard and other kids start to catch up. 3rd and 4th grades are pivotal grades for underachievement. So, this is where the teacher who does not know about differentiating the curriculum, making one group able to go further, faster, deeper, harder than another group in the same classroom, and doesn't know that's okay, can kill a bright child, can kill their interest. So, I wish that were true. When teachers teach at a high level, students at all levels rise to meet the challenge. Fact or fiction? That is absolute fact. And we see it in the lowest ability schools in the ghetto, and we see it in the Forest Hills and the East Grand Rapids. You expect more and you get more. Okay. Now, what is high ability? I'd like you to ask some questions here of my panel, Mike and Emma. Anything you'd like to ask them, really, but I'd like to throw it open first. Like, I know that both of you slaughter the heck out of my vocabulary tests. They started out the year with 25 Latin and Greek vocabulary words a week that they had to memorize and be tested on. They had to do analogies that were killer, and they had to compose deeply intricate sentences using those vocabulary words that, I mean, they really were hard. And they both rose to this task, licking their chops. When did you notice that you had abilities to just, I don't know, engorge language like that?
Like maybe in regular school or as
In your life, did you notice your facility with language early?
Yes.
I guess probably by third grade is when I really started reading a lot, so that probably would be as say as any.
Okay.
I think since I was a little kid, my parents read to me a lot, and I always read. And if I had any spare time, I read, and it was just. And we had tapes of the Harry Potter books, and I would get the books and I'd read along with the tapes. And so I've always loved words and books since I was really little. That's been one of my favorite things.
Okay. Do you think you were reading before you started school?
Little.
What about you, Mike?
I think a little. I don't really remember though.
Yeah. It depends which years.
Okay. I had an interesting experience at the State Gifted and Talented Convention once when we were honoring middle schoolers who had taken the SAT and gotten a perfect score. And one woman stood up in the back and said to this, I guess, 15-year-old girl who had gotten, a perfect verbal score, "Don't you think you should thank your teachers for teaching you to read?" And she said, "No. I've been reading since I was 3. All my teachers did was hold me back." And that is something to consider. That with bright kids, they frequently come to school with some reading knowledge and some ability. I was a gifted and talented coordinator for a school district, for Northview School District, in fact, and one of my tasks was to take 3 kindergartners aside for a couple of days a week and let them read to me. And there wasn't time for the kindergarten teacher to do that, and the parents weren't really happy about doing that because they weren't their kids, but they were reading on a 3rd grade level, and they came to school that way. And the kindergarten teacher felt that they needed someone to read to applaud their efforts, and they needed this small group experience, and they didn't need to have it swept under the rug. And so I just sat with them with a great books program for 1st grade. And we read great books together. So it does happen that you can come to school with a very fluid reading background. A lot happens if you read to your kids or if your kids are read to. Don't think that it doesn't. Okay. Any questions that you would like to ask my panel of experience here? Mike, you have expressed some sarcasm about some of your school experiences. And they weren't related to English necessarily. I mean, you mentioned some things about science classes, I think, last year.
Yeah, science class is probably one of the ones I noticed mostly, that it's really repetitive. Really, really repetitive. It's like we do a lot of things over and over and over and over however many grades. That you just learn the same thing 2 years in a row. And I fail to see the point in learning the same thing twice.
What, now you started out in the Wyoming public schools, didn't you?
Charter.
Okay, charter, okay. And then Why did you end up then transferring to City?
Because my 5th and 6th grade years for me were just a walk in the park. I was getting everything. My homework was done in class. I never was challenged. I felt like it just felt easy and boring, and I was tired, and I was sick of being the nerd. And so then City is great because there's a lot of smarter kids, and then I feel challenged and my classes are harder, and I don't feel like I'm learning the same thing over and over.
Mm-hmm. But you still left City to come to ATIP.
Yes, because my brother had started ATIP and we knew it was a higher level beyond City too.
So is the ATIP Language Arts programs okay?
It's fantastic.
Okay, okay. Good child, good child. I should mention that where is the normal 9th grade curriculum is to read portions of the Odyssey. They had to read all of it. In Mike's year, they didn't read the Odyssey, but they read and did a research paper on Huckleberry Finn, which her group has just started. They did Emerson's Self-Reliance, and then had to do a project on it. The year before Mike's group, the project on self-reliance, several of the kids related the theme of self-reliance, and Emerson is dry, and those of you who suffered through that in 10th grade, they related it to music. They picked contemporary themes and people that I never heard of and brought the essence of contemporary songwriting on self-reliance into 18th century literature, which I thought was pretty cool. The essence of teaching gifted kids is give them something to chew on and then let them tell you how to relate it. You don't have to tell them. You give them a great deal of leeway. Emma's project for the Odyssey was to do a Facebook page for the goddess Athena. That was pretty creative, but it fit. Now, I'm talking about gifted this, gifted that. What is giftedness per se? Let me just give you here, and this should be in your materials. So this horrible overhead is much clearer in your materials. But what we're talking about is superior ability. In a school setting, this is almost always limited to superior academic ability. This is old style. Since Howard Gardner came out with his multiple intelligences, we are now looking beyond just academic ability, and we are looking at spatial intelligence, kinetic intelligence, musical intelligence, other things. And there are a few schools, like the Challenger School in East Kentwood, that actually does train their teachers to look at more than just academic intelligence. But in the real world, it's just academic intelligence. And the general descriptions include, when we're talking about communication skills, we're talking about, as all teachers know, the ability to manipulate symbols. Letters are symbols. Numbers are symbols. Can you communicate with letters and numbers? Can you manipulate things and make them into a communicative whole? The ability to communicate fluently with peers and in communities, even with non-standard English. This is crucial because you probably won't all end up teaching in East Grand Rapids. You will end up teaching in schools with bright kids from non-standard English communities. If you go by the research and by strictly percentages, you know that 6% of every population is going to be gifted, not just the cute little white suburban kids. Every population. They don't have to have standard English to be gifted. You might have to be able to identify their symbol system to find out that they are gifted. All right. Verbal aggressiveness often inhibited in females, might actually be an indication of superior ability. Imagination and creativity. How do you identify that? Well, it's not just artistic ability. Look at it in other ways. Are they good at finding uses for things? That is an indication of superior ability. What about humor? The ability to see irony, disparity, ambiguity, to see the ridiculous and the absurd. These are crucial things in being able to identify the not always represented gifted. The gift of inquiry, the kid who drives you crazy asking questions, but not to be obnoxious, but because they're truly curious, but who likes to try new things, is observant, is curious, and likes to read. This is the sign of superior ability. Who has insight. And this is, to me, one of the joys of teaching a whole class of intellectual peers is there's no one there who's going to roll his or her eyes and say, oh, that's so dorky. They are safe in a classroom of intellectual peers to ask questions and to say, but why did Odysseus keep falling asleep? Because that's crucial. And if they said it in a regular classroom, what would they get? Ugh. It's an inquiry. I watched in one class while the kids asked questions and figured out the definition of tragedy on their own. I didn't have to stand there and give them notes. I had them read 3 plays and said, so what do they have in common? And they worked it out for themselves. That is beautiful, and that is insight, and that is thinking. And you can't just give kids the gift of thought. They have it. You have to pull it out of them. You have to have someone in your classroom who can think, and you, as the teacher, have to provide the safe area for them to do it. And you do that by outlawing eye-rolling and making it a good, safe environment for inquiry, making jumps in understanding and coping with abstract concepts. The superior abilitied child is interested in a variety of things and or has a deeply focused interest in a particular topic. I'd be willing to bet these kids have both a wide variety of interests and a deeply focused interest without even knowing that much about them personally. I do know that Emma dances and plays at least one instrument.
Violin and a little piano.
Okay. What about you, Michael?
As far as like what?
What? Do you have wide interests? I think you do.
I fence, I play bassoon, I enjoy math, obviously language arts, and pretty much any other subject, I guess. Just math and language arts are the personal favorites.
Okay. I did not know about the bassoon or the fencing. It is interesting how many kids in ATIP are fencing now. Is that a...
3, as far as I know.
In your class?
2 in year 1.
Yeah,
Yes.
Caddy and Lois.
Yes, 2 that I know of. Uh-huh.
It's kind of, it's
The idea of
mental and physical,
bright
so.
people with swords is kind of scary. All right, going right on. Memory, the ability to store and retrieve large amounts of information, and the ability to manipulate concepts to aid memory. The large amounts of information is scary. These are not the people you wish to challenge to play Trivial Pursuits with. They know it all. Problem solving, the ability to use stored knowledge to solve problems and to find many solutions. Motivation, a strong sense of pride, self, and worth, showing personal initiative, leadership ability, independence, reasoning. Now, affective skills, you'll find that, as it says here, the nuclear or extended family is very important. I'm going to say something very inflammatory here. It's not really controversial because I've got the research to back it up, but it doesn't sound good. In my program, I have Native American children, I have Cuban children, I have Mexican children. We have lots and lots of East Indian children in the math program, and I have lots and lots of suburban and urban, or suburban and even rural white children. What I don't have is I don't have children from dysfunctional families. I don't have children from single parent families where one parent has not merged into another family. I have children from nuclear families. And why is that? Because they are enriched by their families. Their families support their educational needs. Their families put their educational needs and their academic needs first. Their families are integral in their lives. Their families have the time and the energy, the emotional energy to do it. It's not a matter of not having high enough priority. It's having the emotional energy. One of my goals in my retirement is to offer the kind of enrichment these kids get from their families to the urban kids who don't get it from their families. But I don't even know if that's going to be a possibility. You will have in your classrooms bright kids who will not get the enrichment their brains need because their family life will not have a book or a magazine or an adult in the house with time to read to them, with $2 to take them on a bus trip to a museum, with any spare emotional life left after working to give anything more to that child's enrichment. That's the way life is. So you as a teacher might be the only one who can offer additional enrichment to that bright child to prevent this 3rd, 4th grade upcoming underachievement. 6% of every cultural group will be gifted. Whether or not they attain the potential is, for the most part, almost up to the parents, but it is also up to the teacher. We have the possibility of reaching kids that are going to be left behind. The No Child Left Behind Act is spending millions of dollars to close the achievement gap down here. What they are not doing much research on, but has come out just in the last year, 2009 study, is there's also an excellence gap up here. And unfortunately, that gap is closing, but it's not closing because the middle of the road is rising to the highest. The excellence gap is closing because our peak of excellence in the United States is collapsing down. We're falling like a collapsing volcano. Because in America, all our emphasis is here. And if you want the future of America to be run by the people we've saved down here, that's fine. I want the future of America to be run by these kids. So we also need to be doing something for the upper levels. Okay. Now, I speak mostly for the verbally talented learner. They have speaking behaviors, reading behaviors, writing behaviors. There are specific language arts behaviors. These are things you can look for in your classroom. But I want you also, future teachers, to be aware of the problems you're going to run into. And I have this in your handout. And this is crucial to me. If they learn quickly and easily and have the ability to reason quickly, they could become bored and frustrated. If they exhibit verbal proficiency, they could dominate discussion and have difficulty with listening skills and exhibit manipulative behavior. If they have a high energy level, they need less sleep, and they will become frustrated with inactivity and the lack of challenge or active inquiry. If they exhibit heightened curiosity, they may take on too many activities. Now I'm going to stop here and turn to my panel of experts and ask you about too many activities.
Yes.
And why do you just say yes?
Because I've had that problem a lot, figuring out what do you want to do all the time. It's like I have a lot of things that are going on, and I have to really take a lot of time to pick and choose what I want to do.
So we're putting a lot of pressure on you to make life decisions, really. What do you have to give up?
A lot of social time or just free time, like extra things, is like with homework and everything, plus I'm fencing every Tuesday, plus my instrument and everything, that piles up a lot.
Okay, so do you take private lessons?
Yes, well, I haven't for a while, but I'm going to get started with that again.
Okay, so you've got time to set aside for private lessons. Okay, you dance, so.
I dance, I play the violin, and I used to do theater, and I wish I could do more of it, but with dance and ATIP and school, I can't do much of that now. And I'm in the orchestra, so I can't be in the choir, but I love to sing. And I wish I could run more and do more sports, but I don't have time.
Okay. What about friends?
I usually still have enough time for friends, but not maybe as much as a lot of people do.
You don't go,
It's like
I haven't been to a sleepover in like a year.
Last weekend or something, last weekend, or some weekends anyways, it ends up that like I'll spend the whole weekend trying to get homework done because I don't have enough time during the weeknights to do it, and I can't get it all done at school. Homework. So as opposed to getting together with friends or something like that over the weekend, then you end up typing an essay over the weekend because you have to do all your regular school homework during the school week, and then you got all your ATIP homework left for 2 days on the weekend.
You find that if you cram your schedule, I've gotten to a point where I have a major meltdown because I've had so much going on, and I forget to have a time where I can relax for me, and then, or to be with friends.
Okay, what does major meltdown mean?
That I'm crying, that I think I can't finish everything, that I think I'm going to fail my tests when I really don't. I get hundreds on them, and then I get grouchy with everybody because I'm in a bad mood and I feel like I can't do anything. And obviously I know with myself that I can, but it's hard to be able to do everything,
Do you guys ever have meltdowns at school?
Like public meltdowns, maybe personal, mental.
Not especially, except for one time that, I mean, I had a test, a science test, and I take it so seriously, and then I hadn't studied because, and I know most of it, but I had rehearsal for dance, and I'd been gone, and I was sick, and I come back and we have a test, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I don't know this, because I hadn't been there. And I still had to take the test, and I did okay, but, you know, I was freaking out, and I kind of had a meltdown.
Now, at a younger age, and we have younger kids in our class, and you've seen some that have had meltdowns in class.
Yeah.
Okay, not a pretty sight. When you have kids with high intelligence, they also are extremely sensitive. And one of the things they are sensitive to is perfectionism. And when a highly perfectionistic kid who is used to always getting things right does not get things right, this is a problem. Your first paper for me.
Ah, yeah, the special place.
Yes, was wrong.
It's fine.
And it did not meet my criteria.
No.
Did we have a problem there?
A little, but I wrote a new one.
Okay,
It
all
was
right.
better.
But
So-
I gave a college level assignment on purpose to kids who have always gotten A's on all of their papers as okay, reality meets the road here. And we had sobs and tears from many directions because no one had ever seen this kind of assignment before,
Nor that type of grade.
nor that type of grade. And any grade lower than an A was a startling thing, and I gave D's. And in Emma's case, a 0 because it, well, she just didn't get a grade because her paper did not meet the assignment. So that was quite an experience to go through.
It was startling because you think you write a great paper and because it was good, but it wasn't good for what you assigned. And so then I was going, wait, what? You get a little startled.
Yes, you have to be prepared for that. You have to, and they can be perceived as stubborn and uncooperative. What do you mean it wasn't good? You have to learn to defend, because you have a right to say, no, this is my standard. I explained myself. This is a new ball game. And if you are sure that you are doing right, you have a rubric, you explained it, they have to come to your standard. You know, it is tough. Also, the gifted exhibit very different learning styles. They don't want to do something simple. They really don't. Now, you may call them immature. I had one experience with a girl who was really exceptionally gifted in science. As a youngster in elementary school, she would write letters to professors and other professional entomologists, bug collectors, all around the world. She was carrying on professional level correspondence with them. And she was quite a bug collector herself. Her parents were teachers. She had been to Costa Rica and Guatemala. She had collected all kinds of things that I never wanted to see. And she was quite fluent on the subject. I found out about a special program that she could go to at MSU. And I went to her science teacher and said, please recommend Emily for this program. And he said, no, she doesn't deserve it. She has a bad attitude. I went to recommend this little girl who is needy, but that little girl had the brains of peanut butter. He didn't like Emily because Emily was arrogant about her knowledge. I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with giftedness. You might want to slap these kids upside the head. That doesn't matter. We're not talking about their attitude. We're talking about their intellectual ability and the fact that their intellectual ability deserves just as much enrichment, just as much desire for mastery and achievement as someone from the lower level. You don't give them a reward because they deserve it. You give them a reward because their brains, are what we're talking about. Okay, I find also that this is very, very true. Very bright kids are concerned with adult and moral issues. They are highly idealistic. I walked into the classroom one day and there was a huge political debate going on. And I'm not comfortable with that with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. One of them had actually put something up. We have a wiki, a class online thing where kids can type in their opinions, they can change each other's opinions, they can adapt it. And there was something going on politically, and I just wiped out the whole thing. It was getting too hot and too opinionated, and I'm not comfortable with that, with things that are that sensitive. So they were becoming intolerant. And that's something you cannot have in a classroom, so I just yanked it. Okay, there are things like that that you really do have to take into consideration. Now, I loaded this up, and I don't know if this is going to work or not.
It looks like
Now, anybody else have any questions here for my resident nice people experts while we've got them here?
I have a question.
Yes.
It might be for you or them. What could your teachers do to maybe necessarily, if you're in the classroom, give you guys a challenge, but at the same time, I guess you don't want to make the other kids feel stupid or dumb or behind, but at the same time give you guys a challenge. How would you guys recommend doing that?
I found that something that really worked in classes has been that before you start a unit in something, give a test on it before you doing any instructions, and if anyone passes the test with a good grade, you pick those people and put them in a group and have them do something else or look more in depth. And then the people who don't do as good, have them do something else. So it's kind of like separating groups a little bit more.
Yeah, I found that worked because when I was, for my other language arts classes in elementary, we had 3 groups of people who were, who needed more help and people who were on average and people who were a little more gifted. And it worked very well because we would read 3 separate novels and that were more challenging for people who needed more of a challenge. And we did have extra helpers come in and extra parents come in, and that was more of an issue to get more people in, but it helped if we separated, and the people who are gifted will have probably they'll want it maybe a little more, and they'll want to maybe get more in depth, so it's easier for them to focus on what they're doing in a way. So I found that if you split it up a little more but make it fair for everybody, it works better.
Or something that works if you're using, if it's in something that's like math, then certain people do good on a quiz or something, then have them do more challenging problems on a worksheet, and people who don't do it as well do less challenging problems on a worksheet.
I've heard it said in math that if you can do the last 3 problems on a page, the last 3 are the hardest. If you can do them, you don't need to do the whole page. You've done them. But what I've put up here on the screen is a URL that you should should become familiar with if you are at all interested in gifted education. This is the National Association for Gifted Children. It is the #1 outlet for gifted information in the United States, the NAGC. And what they have right there is the current federal definition of giftedness. It is students who give evidence of high achievement capability in areas such as intellectual, creative, artistic, or leadership capacity, and who need services and activities not ordinarily provided by schools in order to fully develop those capabilities. And the neat thing about this particular website is it not only gives all this information here about the national organization. It gives products and services for families and educators, and it's almost all free. Gifted education is not a for-profit thing. It gives you the state of the nation in gifted education, and I was going to take the time here to show you what is the amount of gifted education right now in the state of Michigan. But I can tell you right now, there is no mandate for gifted education in the state of Michigan, but the state of Michigan does set aside $285,000 for the entire state for gifted education. Kent County is one of the few counties that does have still a gifted and talented coordinator. We are one of the few counties that still has a program, and this is a very good place to live. Holland also has a program similar to ATIP. It's at Hope College. Western University runs an ATIP program and has for 20 years. They are available. They are not cheap. School districts do pay for these kids to come. If they qualify, then they can prove it. The beauty of this program is these kids will do all of their high school English in 3 years. So you're in 7th grade, she'll do it 7th, 8th, and 9th. By the time she's in 9th grade, she'll be done with high school English. At that point, the school district will pay her dual enrollment to take her college English, and she'll be doing that locally, probably at Calvin, Aquinas, Grand Valley, one of the local schools. So she will take the AP test and will be showing stuff like that. I am trying to pull up here something that I want you to be familiar with. It's not always easy to go from one format to another. And if it doesn't come up, I will tell you what it is. It's Bloom's Taxonomy. This is something I just added. It's not in your materials. Fiddle. Okay. Yeah, you can find it online. Oh, okay. Bloom's Taxonomy. This is another version of it. It's just not as good a version. And that's another version. I don't know why it's cycling through it. Oh, well, that's not Bloom's Taxonomy. That's a bell curve. And I don't really want that. That's kind of an interesting thing, though. I was going to show you about IQ and where giftedness falls in IQ. This is what I wanted. I wonder if I can get it to stop. Go back. People say to me, what is gifted and where?
There should be a pause button up in the corner if you put your mouse up there.
Tell me which one the pause is. Oh, okay, I didn't want that one.
Push pause and then see the arrows.
Okay. Well, let's look at this for a minute. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was registered at 75. And so that's way down at the end of the Wechsler IQ. The average IQ is 100. So where does gifted fall in? When I was in high school, you weren't considered gifted unless you had an IQ of 125 or higher. Now, IQ is not what determines entrance into gifted programs anymore. ACT and SAT scores, which is a much fairer score. However, there is a difference. The ACT is an achievement test. The SAT is an IQ test. So we are testing different things. ACT tests what you know. SAT tests your potential to learn. They are different. That's why Michigan colleges use the ACT. It tests what you know. Eastern colleges use the SAT, your ability to learn. They measure different things. However, basically, IQ is only measuring intellectual ability. This chart is kind of screwy, but it does give you the idea of, you know, I think it's kind of insulting, but it talks about life chances and training potential and things like that. I think it's interesting that they put teachers between 110 and 125 on this particular IQ curve. Interestingly enough, high creativity usually falls between the 115 and 120 to 125 range, not in the upper gifted range. It's like the higher you are in intellectual ability, the less creative you can become. That's just statistically, that's not on an individual basis. I don't know that I necessarily believe it, but that's the statistics. If anyone is interested, I will show you what gifted is intellectually. Come on, you stupid things here. But what I was showing you was telling you about Bloom's taxonomy. This is what you as a teacher should become familiar with. Bloom's taxonomy is simply the level of learning, and it is done in a taxonomy. Simply means one step has to come before the other. You have to start at the bottom block. They're calling it recall. We called it knowledge. You start with the bottom. You can't go anywhere unless you absolutely know something. Simple knowledge is the bottom level. And after that comes comprehension or understanding of it. And after that, you have to be able to apply that knowledge. Above that, analyze that knowledge. Above that, and you'll see in this one, people have not figured out yet which is the top level, synthesizing or evaluation. Bloom himself, Dr. Benjamin Bloom, felt that synthesis was the #1 intellectual capability, creating new knowledge out of what you already knew. But some people feel that being able to judge is the #1 evaluative skill. But these build on one another. If you make sure in your classroom that you do not end with simple knowledge and comprehension, that every task has an extension, that your kids know how to apply it, or know how to analyze something, or can think richer into, how do I use this? How can I make this into something else? You will appeal to any intellectually minded kid in your classroom and to those who are struggling. There is nothing simpler than to simply get yourself a copy of Bloom's Taxonomy, and then every time you are organizing a task in your classroom, make sure you have extensions on up Bloom's Taxonomy as far as you can go. Or what I did with Emma's class, I gave them a copy of Bloom's Taxonomy and a bag of popcorn, multicolored popcorn, and said, you learn Bloom's Taxonomy, and you do all these tasks with knowledge, comprehension, analysis, application, synthesis, evaluation in regards to the popcorn, because then you're going to be doing this with the Odyssey, and eventually they will be doing this with Huckleberry Finn, and they will be doing this with To Kill a Mockingbird, and they will be doing this with Emerson. They will be extending their own education. And they probably haven't realized that I use it when I ask them questions. I'm using Bloom's Taxonomy. Well, how do you get there from here? How do you analyze this? In Bloom's Taxonomy, there are lists of verbs that you as a teacher can use. Debate that, analyze that, document that, solve that, defend your thesis, evaluate, contrast this to that. It's all done for you, so you can pick these verbs out and design your tasks that extend the thinking for the kids. It's really about the easiest way I know of to make sure that the thinking level in your classroom goes up and doesn't stay at the just recite the names of the states, tell me the names of the characters in the book, was there a happy ending or not. It's a little more work because you can't just use the textbook. We don't even have a textbook. I have to make everything up. It is a lot more work. But the point of it is it worth it? Yes, there's nothing more exciting in my life than bouncing ideas with people who have ideas, who are forming ideas. And there's nothing more rewarding in my life than being a teacher. And there's nothing more rewarding than being a teacher for people who come alive and whose eyes light up. And even though we have an occasional meltdown, it is really definitely worth it from my point of view. I have my master's from Grand Valley in Gifted and Talented, and it's an excellent place to go for graduate work. This is not a plug, but that is one of the majors that they do have there. There are colleges all across the nation that specialize in it, and it is a K-12 program. So it doesn't matter whether you're thinking of going into middle school, elementary school, or secondary. Gifted and Talented has avenues that can be plugged into any curriculum. I have more information on where does giftedness come from, the myelination of the brain, the fact that it is about 50% genetic and 50% environmental, and a good deal of chemical stuff too, but my time is up, and there's great snacks and drinks and stuff available, but I'd be happy to stay and talk with any of you and explain any of the other stuff. Your handout includes Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences and things like that, but I'm pretty much done. Thank you so much for coming.